Hey guys, Thomas Cecilia Jr. here, aka Mustache Tom, here to finally review Metal Gear Solid 5 The Phantom Pain. Another video game review. It's once again been quite a while since I've done one of these, and I know this game's particularly an older game at this point, but I did want to try a new type of format for these video game reviews moving forward. I've just, of course, finished the LP, which is why I'm doing this review, and as always, I will link in the description the first part of the Let's Play, so you can check it out from the first part and continue on forward if you wish to do so. So, as I mentioned, there will be a new format. Instead of just giving an overall grade, I will, for video games anyways, now give two different grades depending on if the two different subjects I mainly cover when I do video game reviews in the past, that being the story and that being the gameplay separately, giving those two things separate scores if I really do feel that it is deserved. And I think Metal Gear Solid 5 The Phantom Pain is actually a good starting place to try this out, since I really do think that the scores of those two things are very different. So let's start with the story of Metal Gear Solid 5 The Phantom Pain. And yes, there will be spoilers for this game that's already kind of oldish now at this point, but nonetheless, in this story we follow Snake, or a version of Snake, and he has spent 9 years after getting blown to smithereens from the previous Metal Gear Solid 5 game. I forget the subtitle of that one at this point, but nonetheless, you spend 9 years recovering, and from that point forward, shit goes all to hell as a bunch of individuals are trying to attack you in this said hospital. You must escape with this other individual. I believe either he refers to you as Ishmael, or he's Ishmael, or Ahab, or whatever. Nonetheless, you escape with him, avoiding getting caught by all these soldiers and whatnot. And once you do, you regroup with Ocelot, and eventually make your way to rebuilding your arm and making your way to Afghanistan to deal with various soldiers and rebuilding Mother Base and so on and so forth. So, from that, you do come across two open sandbox-like areas in the Phantom Pain, and you take on several different missions, main missions and side missions, some side missions becoming pretty important to the story, and even more story is stored away in cassette tapes. I do think that is a little bit... I do feel like that is a little bit of a distraction, or like not the best, I should say not the best way it could have been presented, the story, like a lot of that stuff. I kind of understand where they were coming from, like they wanted to, there did seem to be a lot more focus on the gameplay than the actual story in this, and I will get to that very briefly. But nonetheless, you take on these missions, and each mission you can get like these little like talk tos about like what's going on in the mission and so on and so forth. And for the most part, it does play out pretty normally up until a certain point, and then you do take on a sort of set of repeat missions, and then finally get back to the story. In which case, there isn't much really after that other than taking on the final mission, which is essentially replaying the first mission, but with all the stuff that was hidden away from you, and the obvious reveal that you were this medic character all along. However, there is the obvious issue in the room that there is a certain point where the Metal Gear introduced in this game is taken away from you by Eli, or as we would come to know him later as Liquid. Uh, we see him go away with Metal Gear, taking it along with the kids, and we already far know that there was a set chapter 3 to be a part of this game that was completely removed or just not placed in the game due to Konami pretty much saying, this is where we're drawing the line, and also then firing Kojima in the process of after policing out this game. And that is a big factor of why this score is going to be so low, is essentially the ending is missing. There is no ending. And, Konami has gone on to clearly go make Metal Gear Survive, and apparently they're in the process of making a sequel to that. So, to me, it is a weird thing that they actually decided to, at some point, come back to this game and actually add in quiet into the FOB missions. However, I don't feel like they're ever going to clearly add the ending to this game. I do think that, while it was weird to place quiet there and do that for free for players, I don't think that's enough of an apology from, for someone like me who wanted a complete story. Um, you know, there could have been ways that they could have gotten around to it if they had done it sooner, or, had just given more time and more patience to this game, or if they really had to do it this way, they could have patched in the ending, if anything else. I don't think people would have been very happy with it being DLC, especially if it had been overpriced. I think some people would be satisfied enough if it was DLC and if it was properly priced. I don't know. As for me, you know, I do think that's a bit of a cheapskate to have a part of the actual game that was supposed to be there cut off and then added back in as DLC, regardless of price. But, yeah, there could have been several ways to go about fixing that. But as the story is, with the ending being completely cut off, and I do think, again, the whole cassette tape thing, while it does make sense for the gameplay, as far as the actual story goes, there are a little bit elements that just don't feel complete. I do feel like even with the cassette tapes, Skullface doesn't get a lot of play in this game as a villain. Um, so there are quite a few details that could have definitely been stretched out. And I don't know if, like, yeah, because Skullface, yeah, I don't even think with a chapter thing, I don't think Skullface, because he dies, obviously, I don't think his story would have gone any further, so again, that's another issue on top of the other ones that I have mentioned. So I'm going to give the story of Metal Gear Solid 5, The Phantom Pain, a low score of 4 out of 10. However, regardless of the story, it's time to talk about the gameplay. And in Metal Gear Solid, The Phantom Pain, the open sandbox game it still holds up extraordinarily well. The controls are very nice. Being able to sneak in and use a variety set of weapons and or items is definitely an innovation to go back to the game and just sort of mess around with all the ways you can potentially sneak around. Now, when I was doing the Let's Play, I kind of kept it pretty simple for the most part. But again, that was just the way I decided to play. There could have been a myriad amount of ways where I could have infiltrated bases either more stealthily or gone and gone blazing or used various items that could have helped me stealth in different ways altogether. Again, there's just so many options, and there's definitely a heavy replayability in this game. Uh, while I do think the environments aren't that grand per se, I do think that the open sandbox was warranted enough. I don't think I don't think traveling around is that bad when your character can either continuously run, or you could just sort of use the helicopter to get pretty close enough to any goal that you want to obtain, and then sort of make your way there. Um, so I don't think traveling was ever really much of an issue in this game either. And again, just because of the simple, sorry, not simple, but the vast variety of ways you can go about doing missions, it invited you to visit back to these missions and try out these different things, try out these different items, pick up these different sort of objectives. There had been side objectives that weren't there before, or they were there, but I should have said they were there, but you just didn't have the items to access to get those items. Um, and just getting all those resources and stuff of that nature definitely warranted. It gave a good implication of, like, not implication, but a good, what's the word I'm looking for? I'll just say it again, a good replay value to this game. And I do think that this is one of the earlier games that really invigorated the whole open sandbox, thing. I think about all the other games that have come out more recently, games that I'm playing now, even still, Far Cry 5. And I know that some of the previous installments of that game have been open world or open sandbox, whatever word you want to use. I tend to try to use the more proper term, which I do. I do think it is open sandbox. Um, Games like that, games like Spider-Man that have come out fairly recently, games like there are failures in this regard as well. Dynasty Warriors 9 is an example of that, but I am currently going through that now and slugging my way through that now. But there will be a review of that game when it is done on my Let's Play list, so there's that to look forward to. I'm still gathering some thoughts about that. But as going back to this game, I do think that this is one of the earlier examples of an open sandbox game that really took advantage of just the way you could approach every single mission, the way you could approach every single environment, really lending itself to all the different items and such. And again, the game runs smoothly. There are certain very few areas in the game where Snake, depending on where you move to certain cliff faces, where he'll sort of start running towards it and then sort of get stuck. That is the only hiccup as far as movement is concerned that I have found within the game. Other than that, yeah, this gameplay is extraordinarily solid. The open sandbox, again, heavily invites you to explore not only just the world, the areas, but ways to get into these areas, way to sneak around these areas. And so my score for the gameplay still holds up at a strong 8 out of 10 even to this day. I do think that this game, as far as gameplay is concerned, still holds up. The story, not so much. You know, getting just little extra little things I will mention that don't affect either score. I'm not really sure where I'll place these yet, but music is totally fine. They do borrow more classical music for the little cassettes that you can pick up and just listen to on your own time. Um, I don't have a scoring system for music yet. I don't think it changes this game particularly in any significant way. Um, so again, I'm not sure where, if I should create a separate scoring system for that. I don't feel that is necessary for at least this game anyway. Um, so there's that. But I would like to know, before I do end this review, what you guys think of this new style of review, separating the story score from the gameplay score instead of just giving an overall score. I really would like to hear your comments on this approach to it, and if there are any other little aspects that could go into this type of review. Uh, just keep in mind in advance that I don't think that graphics will ever affect a grade overall, so I don't think I would ever actually create a subsection of like the graphics of this game were really good or they were really bad or whatever. I don't think that will affect my enjoyment of a game at any point. I can think of various games that there have been very simplistically, graphically put together, and they have been phenomenal games, and I've seen the inverse of that. So again, I don't think graphics ultimately can define how good or bad a game is, in my opinion. So I don't think that it would be necessary to create a section for graphics. I could mention it at some point in my reviews going on forward if you want to know how I feel about graphic fidelity and all that stuff. But I don't think overall that will affect the either of the main scores that I currently have. So there's that. Again, I still want to know your guys' opinion on that kind of stuff, regardless. And if you did like this review and you like the new setup, then please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. And until next time, also make sure to check out that link in the description episode. Head you over to my Patreon page. I almost forgot this time. But, yes, it will lead you to my Patreon page, and any donations are greatly appreciated. And until next time, there we go. Bye-bye.